Antarctica, so close but so far from Australia, where watchful eyes are always peeled. So you never know when there's a growler below. Watchful eyes peeled for predators who prey, where all you can do is whatever you can to keep the hunt at bay. The time is coming, and it's coming soon, when we'll stand between you and that harpoon. Floors that rave for those capsized before us, fell beneath the waves. Perhaps we'll join them by accident or not, a gale or a storm, a well-placed shot. But we'll steer around the ice and right into their sights. Everyone must pick their battles. This is our fight. So here beneath the Southern Cross and the crescent moon, we'll stand between you and that harpoon. Between you and the harpoon, there's just a little space, but that's where we can see your face. Look into your eyes and hear you sing. Come to realize you have to do something. Sometimes all you can do is doing your best and hope that someone else will do the rest. So once again we'll spend this afternoon standing between you and the harpoon. Sometimes you hear things and it's just a little just too unbelievable to be true, but then you find out it's actually true. Like, you know that in 1838, Britain, France, the United States, and Russia all made war on China to force them to import addictive drugs. And that's when Hong Kong became a colony. Let me tell you a tale. Stir a hornet's nest, well remembered in the East, most forgotten in the West. It was the 1830s. The Industrial Revolution was turning Europe into a land weight slaves and evolution. The history books tell us it was the era of free trade. The entire world hungers for the product Europe made. Merchants plied their wares across the 7 seas. They brought back things like porcelain, silk, and tea. Soon all the tea in China could barely keep the West awake. Such a thirst for Chinese products as could barely be slaked. They liked to drink their tea, cups of Chinese porcelain, and those who could afford it loved the silk upon their skin. But what made the merchants and the monarchs scream and shout? They seemed to have little to offer that China couldn't live without. They didn't want their muskets, and they didn't want their wool, which left the British coffers empty and the Chinese coffers full. And they called it a trade war. They called it a trade war, and I guess that could be so. They say it's not free trade if it's just a one-way flow, because apparently free trade is when the West comes out ahead. That's how it is in practice, but that's never what is said. The fact of the history, they'd have a sweep under the rug. The one thing they could sell in China was an addictive drug. It had long been banned by Chinese law, but the British didn't care. They packed the opium up in crates and they shipped it there. And they called it a trade war. It all came came to a head in 1838 when the soldiers of the emperor torched 20,000 crates. It took 3 days to burn it, and when the fires had gone out, the Chinese people would soon learn what free trade was all about. Navies came from Britain, France, and the USA. In blood, land, and silver, they would make the Chinese pay. Cities leveled, thousands killed. The war was 3 years long. That's how they opened China. That's how they got Hong Kong. And they called it a trade war. And they called it a trade war. It was John Kerry got on TV a few weeks ago, and it was a fascinating effort at diplomacy. He started out saying that we're not going to lead you to war the way the Bush administration did 10 years ago. We're not going to lie to you. And then he continued, that was the first lie, and then everything else he said was a lie. There wasn't one honest thing he said in that whole speech. There's an uncivil war in Syria, 100,000 dead, millions of refugees without a roof over their heads, proxy armies flowing into a country open wide. You got Al-Qaeda in America fighting side by side. You got Saudi monarchs and French socialists on one team. You got Russia and Iran backing the regime. You got the Arab League having another meaningless debate, saying let's just see what happens if we wait. But now the West says gloves are off, it's all become too real. Now Cameron and Obama are dictating the deal. Now red lines have been crossed. Now it's time to act. Now it's time to have a few million tons of impact. Now it's time to do the thing the West does best. Time to step in the hornet's nest. We don't know who did it, but there's been a war crime, so we'll bomb an Arab country one more time. What we know is this, there was a chemical attack, kind of like the ones that happened in Iraq, like the white phosphorus we used on the people of Fallujah, or the chemicals we sold to Saddam for Halabja. But this time it's a different story. There's poison gas in Ghouta. Our allies would never do this, those foreign fighters in Al-Qaeda. We don't know who did it, but there's been a war crime, so we'll bomb an Arab country one more time. We don't know who did it, but we know who is to blame. The Baathists are the party, Bashar Assad is the name. We don't know who did it, we can figure that out later. Meanwhile, we'll turn Damascus into a smart bomb crater. We'll fix them cruise missiles like in Baghdad and Mosul, where they now have peace, prosperity, and democratic rule. We don't know who did it, but there's been a war crime, so we'll bomb an Arab country one more time. We don't know who did it, but there's been a war crime, so we'll bomb an Arab country one more time. So there's been some entertaining politics, and I mean that's one thing that are useful about elections, for entertainment value. And in Australia, there was one woman who was running for office who had to stop her campaign after saying on national television, "I don't mind Islam as a country." And there were other choice folks like...
it's the guy's name.
Right. It's either that or religion. And she also said that the Jews were good because they followed Jesus. And, I mean, I don't know,
Historically.
They might have followed Jesus with an axe, but they followed Jesus. I don't know. But and then she said halal meat supports terrorism. That's also a fascinating concept right there. That's just you don't even know what to do with that. But of course in New York City we had a possibly even more entertaining politician who was running for Well, he was in the Congress for 9 years, and then he had to resign. I don't know much about, I don't really pay attention to popular culture. Like when I first heard about Lady Gaga, it was because Chelsea Manning had all that data on a Lady Gaga CD. So, you know, I'm behind the times. And I did not know what sexting was until I heard about this politician and his resignation from Congress. And I immediately thought this was a really bad idea on his part. I mean, I'm not exactly sure why you would, for any reason, send pictures of your genitalia taken with a cell phone to anyone, really, whether friend or foe. But if you're a politician, it seems especially inadvisable. But he did it, and then he had to resign, and then he ran for mayor, and then they found out he was still doing it.
Hey, look, you can't help it. It's in his name.
It is in his name, and that is the most disturbing part. Anthony Weiner takes pictures of his wiener and sends them off to lots of women that he's never met. Normally I wouldn't care about some guy's pubic hair, except in this case it's a politician we can hopefully send for yet. He's gonna make New Yorkers proud and show he's very well endowed to be the mayor of the city, from which he sends his tweets. He's a good Democrat. He'll go up to bat for the people of New York and the random women that he greets. Anthony Weiner's wiener, these days it's all the rage. To find out more about his wiener, just take a peek at the front page. I probably wouldn't give a shit about his adolescent wit, whether he was sexting after he resigned from Congress or before. I may not like his style as he issues his denial, but what really bugs me is he voted for the war. Anthony Weiner's wiener, these days it's all the rage. To find out more about his wiener, just take a peek at the front page. Now that it's the second scandal, maybe we can pull the handle and send Anthony's wiener down some flushing drain and await the politician next, who will send a penile text. One vile politician down, but far too many still remain. Anthony Weiner's wiener, these days it's all the rage. To find out more about his wiener, just take a peek at the front page. Went to visit his father out of town, where he had moved to an upscale neighborhood. It rains a lot in Florida, and it was raining on that night, but everyone says exercise is good. He went out for a walk to the convenience store to go out and bring some candy back. But some people leave and they never come home. That night it was a one-way track. For the neighborhood watchman was driving in his car on a rainy night, looking for a young man who might have a part to play in this personal race war. And what if this trolling vigilante, sowing terror on a racist whim? What if when he found this teenage boy, he instead found a man more like him? What if things were different? Where would he be bound? What if Trayvon had stood his ground? When Zimmerman approached in an unmarked vehicle, when the high school student ran, what if instead he had stood there in the rain with his Skittles and his Arizona can? What if trying to avoid a conflict with this cracker who was evidently messed up in the head, Trayvon had said, I feel like my life's in danger, and he had shot this vigilante dead? were different, where would he be bound? What if Trayvon had stood his ground? Would this hooded youth be gingerly arrested, treated for his wounds and then let free? Would he be hailed as a hero by the NRA, by Limbaugh, Beck and Hannity? Would he be found not guilty by any jury in this country? Would he be allowed to keep his gun? Or would he be sitting in a prison cell watching pundits on the TV saying, that kid really should have run? What if things were different? Where would he be bound? What if Trayvon had stood his ground? It's not actually that unusual that a small handful of people can change events in the whole world. And there's one case in Denmark, started in Denmark, that spread around the world in the 70s when everybody else in all the rich countries, almost all of the rich countries in the world, were building nuclear reactors. And Denmark didn't. There's a social movement to blame for that. It was in the 1970s. The fuel crisis had begun. The choices were presented to us as if we had none. Leaders of industry said they could solve the problem by mastering the power of the radioactive atom. Some folks in Western Jutland got a notion in their heads. They thought there might be something they could offer up instead. A few hundred people gathered at a little place called Tvind and declared their will to harness the power of the wind. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. There were many who said their science wasn't sound, that such a mighty windmill would simply topple to the ground. Some of them were scientists, the vast majority were not, but they knew with years of effort you could do a lot. Word about the project spread far and wide. 100,000 visitors came to help and to advise. Until one day these windmill builders drove in with a crane and lifted up their giant wings with a mighty chain. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. When Twindcraft was completed, it reached up to the sky. Its wings churned in the air at 54 meters high. The critics all fell silent. No one now was jeering, as even industry agreed. This was some damn fine engineering. The wind regaled Jutland from the North Atlantic Sea as it was seamlessly converted into electricity. It was power for the people, leukemia for none, when they declared in Denmark, just south of the midnight sun. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. They gave away the patents. They said knowledge should be free. And their plans were copied by a newborn industry. Soon Denmark would be known as a windmill building nation. And it all started with some hippies at the Twindcraft power station, Debates were held in Parliament about which way things should go. Build a nuclear reactor, the majority said no. It could have gone quite differently. In much of the world it did, except for those in Baltimore who said we're getting off the grid. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. So in Greece, there's a lot of people demonstrating quite often, and in large numbers. And you know, but most nights in Athens, there's just lots of people hanging out, and in all the parks, and they're chatting, and they're drinking in moderation, and they're playing bazookies, and occasionally they go and burn down the financial district. But, you know, they only do that like every other month or so. So the rest of the time, you know, they have something to talk about, I think, basically. And there's huge numbers of riot cops in Greece, and they're all watching the people hanging out in the parks. At every park, there's a whole bunch of riot cops, just every night. The budget must be immense. But of course, most nights they don't burn down the banks, they just hang out and play bazookies. And so the cops don't have much to do. But being cops, actually 50% of them are actually fascists, at least 50%, because you know, in Greece how the public servants vote, it has to be public information, and so we actually know that 50% of the Greek cops are indeed fascists. They voted for Golden Dawn. And you know, 7% of the overall population, 50% of the police. So they wade into the parks, and what happens is, you know, the people back up, and then you realize the dogs, that if you haven't noticed before, there's a lot of dogs, and the dogs back up. But the dogs don't just back up, they start barking. And they hold their ground, and they snarl, and they look like guard dogs, and they bark. And then the police will advance some more, and the people will back up, and the dogs will back up and bark and growl. And then the police will fire tear gas, and the people will run to the other side of the tear gas cloud and start throwing bottles and tear gas canisters back at the cops. And the dogs will bark, and except for one dog who never runs from the police, unlike all the rest of the dogs and all the other humans. He stands in the middle of the tear gas cloud and barks. And so he became quite well known in Greece and throughout the world, and his name is Lukanikos. And so the question many people have is, why does Lukanikos never run from the police? You know, is it just, you know, most people figure it's because he's so left-wing and so militant that he just can't bear the thought of running from the police. You know, and some Greek biologists have put forward the hypothesis that he is an example of a genetically superior dog who has adapted and, you know, evolutionary adaptation, and he's now, you know, immune to tear gas. Which would be quite something for a Greek dog to propagate the gene pool. I'm sure that would be very advantageous, you know. But nobody's sure, you know. But I went to Greece a couple times trying to find that dog, and so I like to know my subjects well before I write a song about them. But I got there and found out that, you know, that there are thousands of stray dogs in Athens, and almost all of them are medium-sized, orange, and wearing red bandanas. So trying to figure out which one was Lukanikos was just, you know, I couldn't do it. There was no hope. And so every time I'd see a dog lying on the sidewalk of that description, which was like most of them, I would ask a nearby Greek, is that Lukanikos? And they would look at the dog and say, no, that's not him. So never found him, but luckily there's enough video evidence on the web, so I felt like I could write the song with some authority. Lots of folks are revolting. They've had enough of this shit. The rich are getting richer. They're saying that's it. But with Luke it's emerges from the fog. Let's hear it for Lou Canicos, the riot dog. There's a fight between people, but he is no pawn. He knows exactly which side he's on. In the machine of capital, he is no coward. Let's hear it for Lou Canicos, the riot dog. When a smoke bomb comes towards him, he kicks it back at the fuzz. He acts a bit different than a normal dog does. He's got a fan page on Facebook, but he's got no time for a blog. Let's hear it for Lou Canicos, the riot dog. Let's hear it for Lou Canicos, the riot dog. They don't play me on the radio very much. Not surprised, I suppose. But there was one guy in England who played me on the radio. He had a national radio show on BBC every week. And he played this song about once a month for 3 years until he got fired. And ever since then, nobody plays me on BBC. So the royalty checks, you know, were for many, many years, it was like $10 or $20, somewhere between $10 to $20. And I think the difference was because if there's some radio station in Finland that play me every once in a while, and if you get a song played on Finnish national radio, that's $10. So it would either be $10 or $20, depending on whether Finland played me that season, you know. And then suddenly, you know, you get these things in the mail. It's like 7 pages long of fine print, but it's all like 1 cent, 1 cent, 1 cent, 2 cents, 1 cent, 1 cent. Yeah, because if a community station in the U.S. plays, you get 1 cent. I think that's the same here. And but then, you know, then suddenly the checks started going up to like triple digits. I was getting checks every 3 months for like $400, because every time BBC would play me, it was $94. You know. And then I was rich, and then this guy lost his job, and then the checks went back down to $10. So I brushed with fame. I almost retired. Child, what will you remember when you recall your 16th year? The horrid sound of helicopter gunships, the rumble of the tanks as they drew near, as the world went about its business, and I burned another tank of gasoline. The Dow Jones lost a couple points that day while you were crying in the city of Janine. Did they even give your parents warning before they blew the windows out with shells? As you hid inside the high school basement, amidst the ringing of church bells, as you watched your teacher crumple by the doorway, and in England they were toasting to the Queen. You were so far from the thoughts of so many, huddled in the city of Janine. Were you thinking of the taunting of the soldiers, or of the shit they smeared upon the walls? Were you thinking of your cousin after torture, or Tel Aviv and its glittering shopping malls? When the fat men in their mansions say that you don't want peace, did you wonder what they mean as you sat amidst the stench inside the darkness in the shattered city of Janine? What went through your mind on that day at the sight of your mother's vacant eyes, as she lay still among the rubble beneath the blue Middle Eastern skies? As you stood upon this bulldozed building beside the settlements and their hills so green, as your tears gave way to grim determination amidst the ruins of the city of Janine. And why should anybody wonder, as you stepped on board the crowded bus across the green line, and you reached inside your jacket for the cord? Were you thinking of your neighbors' buried bodies as you made the stage for this scene, as you set off the explosives that were strapped around your waist? Were you thinking of the city of Janine? I live in Portland, Oregon, which is a place that a lot of people are moving to, and so I wrote this song to try to be helpful. Portland is a town that's in the news much of the time. There are a lot of vegans and there's very little crime. It's a messy place to live, folks ride bicycles a lot. The winters aren't so cold and the summers aren't so hot. They build houses out of cob, they hang out in the park, where you needn't worry about walking after dark. There are lots of homeless people, but they don't hurt no one. Just be careful of the boys in blue playing with their guns. Yeah, watch out for the cops. Watch out for the cops. That's the chorus. Watch out for the cops. Watch out for the cops. You can hang out with the punks with the piercings and tattoos. You can eat out at a food truck any neighborhood you choose. You can dance to Balkan music while you drink a microbrew, chilling in a gay bar with the mayor and his crew. But be careful what you say, be prepared to take some flack, especially for those who may be male, young and black. The fact is you knew better in Sweet Home Alabama. You're safer there on the old streets of Birmingham. Yeah, watch out for the cops. 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 Yes, Portland's full of roses, there are flowers everywhere, but for others they've got prisons with some nice electric chairs. You can go downtown, ride the buses there for free, but you never know when you'll get a DWP. A town full of progressives, but such a rotten bunch of cops. Who knows who'll get shot at the next routine traffic stop? When you live in a place like Portland, where they tend to act this way, you could just join the police force instead of the KKK. Yeah, watch out for the cops. 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 Watch Watch out for the cops. Watch out for the cops. Watch out for the cops. Well, the last member of the Mackenzie Papineau Battalion died a few days ago, I believe. And in the US, it was called the Lincoln Battalion. The Germans was the Tailman Brigade. They were old when I was young. Now they've all but passed away. Now it's just a second-hand memory of the day when from all around the world they sailed off to Spain to fight against the fascists, where so many men were slain. Who will recall the days when they all stood side by side, now that the last Lincoln veteran died beside Martin Luther King, or in a veterans parade? You could see the men who made the journey to join the 15th Brigade, when men of many nations, of most every creed and hue, Catholics and Protestants, atheists and Jews, joined together in the trenches to turn back the fascist tide, now that the last Lincoln veteran died. The working class of many nations joined in a desperate bid. With what weapons they could find, they fought to save Madrid from Brussels and Berlin, Galway and London town. Who will recall the brigadistas who went to take the fascists down? There beside the Spanish people, even the figs and olives cried, now that the last Lincoln veteran died. The Republic had the people, but the fascists had the tanks. But Il Duce and Daffy deserve only some of Franco's thanks, 'cause the fuel to move the armor came from the USA, and the men that they gunned down were from New York and Frisco Bay. Uncle Sam claimed he was neutral. Who will remember how he lied, now that the last Lincoln veteran died? They say people get conservative the older that they age. They say that being radical is just a youthful phase, but the finest communist I've known lived to 95, and he spent his whole life striving for humanity to thrive. To forget these fallen heroes is something I cannot abide, now that the last Lincoln veteran died. Now that the last Lincoln veteran died. There's a valley in Spain called Jarama. It's a place that we all know so well. It was there that we gave of our manhood, where so many to play at the playground, to do things I like so much. Run with my friends, play make-believe, swing on the swings and such. But this morning I went to the playground and bullies were guarding the swings. They knocked over the slide, dumped out the sandbox, took away all of our things. This playground is run by bullies, and they're all so big and mean. But this playground was made for all of us, and we're gonna change this scene. Well, all of us were scared of the bullies. They were so big and we were so small. Till somebody said if we organized, we could be 10 feet tall. We stood on each other's shoulders, put blankets over our heads. We looked like monsters and we roared like lions, and those bullies ran home and hid under their beds. This playground was run by bullies, and they're all so big and mean. But this playground was made for all of us, and we're gonna change this scene. Well, we got that playground back, but then we looked across the street, saw the sewage plant belching out smoke, poisoning the ground under our feet. Is giving us all asthma, and the hour is getting late. So we marched across the way, and we blocked that factory gate. 'Cause this world is run by bullies, and they're all so big and mean. But this world was made for all of us, and we're gonna change this scene. This world is run by bullies, and they're all so big and mean. But this world was made for all of us, and we're gonna change this scene. I'll do one more. Thank you so much for coming, and thanks so much to Bill for putting this together, and thanks so much to a fantastic band, and to Lottery for existing, a lot of other people I'm forgetting, and it's great to be back. I am a U.S. citizen, and I'm now required to make a commercial announcement, or I'll lose my passport. I could, or alternatively, I could overthrow a Latin American democracy or bomb a Muslim country. Those are my options. And given the options, it's better to make commercial announcements, I suppose. There's CDs and an email list on that table. And you can go to davidrovics.com and download all these songs for free. And if you want, you can subscribe to me. And, you can read about that. You get lots of CDs in the mail, and a little laminated card giving you free access to all my shows, and other things you can't live without. I'm supposed to say that in a deeper voice, it sells better. First, you have to have a problem. That part isn't hard. The second step is everybody realizing they're like you. They're holding the same card. Step 3 is fighting as a tactic when everyone believes it could be true. That if all the people work collectively, there just might be something we can do, and everything can change. so quick. Businessmen and congressmen and TV sets will try hard to make sure it isn't so. You don't have a problem, and if you do, it's not the same problem. And if it is, well, there's just nowhere you can go. But it's happened many times. The history is rich, though we easily forget how a meme can take hold and grab you, how it can spread out like a net, and everything can change so quick. They'll say we are lost, or we're dreaming, or they'll make a dream for us. They'll try to come up with a good story about why we belong at the back of the bus, about why we belong in this position, about how we don't know what we meant, about how there most certainly isn't any such thing as the 99%, but everything can change so quick. Everything can change so quick. For all the students here in Quebec, when the world has gone crazy, and it's all becoming clear, when they're gunning down our comrades, and it seems the end is near, as they're loading up the launchers for the tear gas grenades, we can take off our bandanas and kiss behind the barricades. When it's madness all around, and you can see this at a glance, we will sing and we will cry, we will laugh and we will dance, as they shout their marching orders beneath the helicopter blades. We shall seize the moment for a kiss behind the barricades. They will try to break our spirit, and at times they may succeed, but our love for the world is stronger than their greed. When the building is surrounded and hope begins to fade, in my final hour, a kiss behind the barricades. As the movement grows, there will be hills and bends, but at the center of the struggle are your lovers and your friends. And the more we hold each other up, the less we can be swayed. Here's some love and solidarity, and a kiss behind the barricades. your script. Arise, your prisoners of light. For reasons and revolt now thunders, and at last ends the age of Kant. Awake with all your superstitions, servile masses, arise, arise. We'll end as for the old traditions burn the dust to win the prize. Also, comrades, come rally, and let's fight the space. The Internationale unites the human race. Also, comrades, come rally, and let's fight the space. The Internationale unites the human race. No more deluded by reaction, on tyrants only will make war. The soldiers too will take strike action, they'll break ranks, they'll fight no more. And if these cattle keep trying to sacrifice us to their pride, they still charge the bullets flying, we'll shoot the generals on our own side. Also, comrades, come rally, and let's fight the space. The Internationale unites the human race. Also, comrades, come rally, and let's fight the space. The Internationale unites the human race. No savior from high delivers, no faith that we infringe or peer. Our own right hand of chains must shiver, chains of hatred, greed, and fear. They're the thieves who laugh at their booty and give you all the hand your luck. Each of the forge must do their duty and strike when the iron is hot. Also, comrades, come rally, and let's fight the space. The Internationale unites the human race. Also, comrades, come rally, and let's fight the space. The Internationale unites the human race. The Internationale unites the human race.
Game over. Nothing under you. Nothing under your
Alors, c'était la performance de David Rovitz sur les ondes de 99media.org. Je vous remercie d'avoir été des nôtres pour cette soirée tout en musique militante.